What's up, everybody? Welcome back to part 2 of my domino reduction tutorial. In this video, I'm going to be teaching you how to finish from the domino reduction part like this to it be solved. So, there are 4 main ways of finishing after you get to this space. There's a straight finish to solved. There's a normal skeleton like you usually would build. There's going to half turn reduction and then finishing from there, or going to half turn reduction and then making a skeleton. And then finally there is solving corners and then doing edge insertions. So I will be going over all of those in this video. So the first one is the most, I guess, basic. It's just finishing. So this is, you can barely ever do this. I rarely ever do this. It's just basically making blocks and then you get a lucky skip at the finish. So like here, I made that. If I do that, I don't get a skip. I get like a skeleton. But in some cases, you can make blocks and get a lucky skip. So let me set up a case real quick. So like, for example here, let's say this is your domino reduction. You just made that block, and then you can make this block, and then when you insert this corner, you get a skip. Doing finishes like this requires just basically trial and error. It's definitely not always the best option, as finishes aren't super obvious, and you can end up wasting a lot of time trying to find finishes. So what you first want to look for is maybe like build blocks, see where you can get to, see if you can get a skip, or build up to skeletons, but don't just solely look for this. Alright, so the second option is building skeletons. This is basically just like normal FMC, where you build up to like a 3C or maybe 3E, 3C, and then do insertions, except this time blocks are easier. So like, for example, you're not necessarily trying to solve corners, so you can make blocks like that. Oh look, we got 2 blocks. Pair those up, maybe something like that. Oh my god, I gotta skip. I guess that should go in the first part. Let's try that again. There's another example for skip. Anyway, so yeah, make a block like that, maybe. You get a block like pair, maybe. Something like that. And then you have, boom, you've got corners left. Or maybe try and do a B2 first, and then that. And then you have a different corner case. Or just play around and try and figure out different skeletons. So that's the next option. This can leave you with corners and edges left. However, corner insertions are kind of mixed. Like, half the time you get like an 8 minus 0 or like a 10 minus 0, and then the other half you get like an 8 minus 5. So corner insertions with domino reduction are iffy. If you have bad corners and a lot of blocks, then you can set up to like a 3C in like 15 or 16. I mean, that's not likely. Maybe like 17 moves. That might be worth checking, especially if the corners are bad on that particular domino reduction. So this is always an option, setting up to like 3C or 3E, 3C, or different kinds of skeletons if you have a very blocky domino reduction. So yeah, there's that's the second way to finish. The third way to finish is corners. Now, this is the most common way of finishing, as domino reduction gives you insanely good edge insertions, like 8 minus 8 stuff. So for example, what you want to look for is easy ways to solve the corners. So like here, if we do this, we can get the corner solved. And you can experiment with wide moves. So like, for example, if I just did that, we get corners. However, if I added like an RY2 at the end, I'd solve some more edges. So you kind of want to play around. There's no like method to solving the corners. You can like solve 3 and then insert the last one, and then sometimes you'll get a skip. Setting up to Ortega cases usually isn't the best. This is a cancellation of an Ortega case. So if I set up to it, see it's this Ortega case. But it's 2 moves already canceled into it, so that's not bad. But I mean, Ortega cases might be okay if like you get it as your corner solution. Other ways of doing corners, let me quickly solve this. Like you can have, this is a good Ortega case to set up to, just R2, F2, R2. You can build bars. Another good way is building bars. So like for example here, if you make this bar right here, you have a 2-gen finish to finish corners. So making bars that give a 2-gen corner finish, that usually leads to get some good cases. It's pretty much very intuitive. So like in this example, we have opposite pair of corners there, and then we have an opposite pair of corners here. And if we do this, we get these 2 opposite pairs of corners, and we can finish corners like that. There are some good corner algorithms. For example, yes, this one. So I'll link some good resources down in the description that have this alg and then the mirror of this alg. But this is a very good corner algorithm. Basically, you have a bar here. This isn't a 2-gen finish, but you have a bar here. You have a corner here that needs to go here. And then you have the checkerboard kind of pattern here. So, yeah, that's kind of how you recognize it. If you do R2, F2, U prime, F2, U, R2, you get corners. And that's very useful. Just wanted to throw that out there as an algorithm. So once you get corners, you have your edges left. So with corner skeletons, you just want to make sure the corners are aligned with each other, and you're not worrying about the M slice or the E slice. You're actually ignoring the E slice for all of these. I forgot to mention this earlier. Just ignore the E slice. Always solve the E slice at the end, because you can usually get insane cancellations, and you don't want to be worrying about the E slice now. Just worry about it later and get insane cancellations. So basically, yeah, ignore the E and M slice and stuff and where all the centers are. Just make sure corners are solved relative to each other. So now you can do algorithms like M2 and stuff where you insert slices to solve pieces. So basically, there are some main algorithms that you should know, and domino reduction makes these algorithms really good because you can cancel a lot. So the first one that you should know is obviously slices, like in M2, which you can't do M2 in FMC, so I usually write it as like R2 or Y2 or R2 L2 X2, and these can usually cancel with moves before them. So for example, if you have like an R2 in your skeleton, you can just turn that R2 into an RY2, and then bam, you have done an M2. And that obviously cycles these two pieces, and then the centers. Don't really worry about the centers too much until the end. They're not that big of a deal. And center insertions, if you have to do them, usually cancel quite a bit. But yeah, if you do like M2 and then insert an M2 somewhere else, it'll solve the centers. So if you do several slices, then you don't really have to worry about centers too much. And then, of course, don't worry about the E-slice. Now let's go over some algorithms and interesting ways that you can learn them. So there are a ton of edge algorithms, even for just the 6 mover, like R2 to R2 to R2 to, the inverse of that, and then like D2, R2, D2, L2 to L2, or stuff like that. There are just tons of variations. So how do you memorize them all? Well, let me show you. Basically, you can use stuff like, you can use inverses, wide move variation, and cycle shifts. So using those three things, you can derive different algorithms from one algorithm. So let's take this algorithm as an example. F2, R2, U2, F2, U2, R2, F2, U2. So we're going to write it out. So we have our algorithm here, and that does this. It swaps these two pieces and these two pieces. So first off, inverse. You can just do the inverse of a 2e, 2e alg, and you'll have the same 2e, 2e alg. So U2, F2, R2, U2, F2, U2, R2, F2 does the exact same thing. With 3e algs, it'll do the inverse. So you only have to learn it one way, and then you can just inverse it for the other way. Same with 5e algs. So yeah. Then we can do wide move variations. So if we turn this F2 into a wide move and this F2 into a wide move, we get the same exact case. So if you memorize which letters to turn into wide moves, so like F2, for example, I believe R2 also works. So F2, R2, U2, F2, U2, R2, F2, U2. And you can combine them together to get different algorithms. So wide move variations, just memorize where wide moves are, or you can like experiment with it. It's usually the same like letter, so like F2, and then it at the begin, the F2 at the beginning, and then like the F2 at the end. Same with R2, and then U2. So yeah. That's wide move variations, pretty simple. I will also be linking something down in the description for wide move variations. So now cycle shifts. Cycle shifts usually give different algorithms, so not necessarily the same one. So like a cycle shift of this alg might not swap these pieces, but would swap these pieces and these pieces. Now let me show you. So a cycle shift basically, let me pull this closer. Cycle shift basically is where you take a move here at the beginning and you move it to the end, or if you take a move at the end and move it to the beginning. It just so happens that the inverse of this alg is just a cycle shift moving the U2 to the beginning. So let's do a cycle shift of this alg. Basically, if we move this F2 to the end, it'll cycle the pieces like off by an F2 kind of. So if we move that F2 to the end, it'll cycle these two pieces and these two pieces. So we'll do that. We'll move the F2 to the end. So R2, U2, F2, U2, R2, F2, U2, F2. And there we go. We cycled these pieces. So let's try cycle shifting the F2 and the R2 to the end. So this will, the F2, so the normal alg cycles these two and these two. So the F2 will move this piece here, and then the R2 will move these two pieces here. So if we move the F2 and the R2 to the end, it'll cycle these two pieces and these two pieces. So there we go, these two pieces and these two pieces. So that's the basics of cycle shifts. So you can use wide move variations, cycle shifts, and inverses to help you get like a bunch of algorithms out of just one algorithm. I'll be putting links in the description for different algorithms you can find and use in your solves. So lastly, I recommend learning all the 8-move 2e, 2e algs and 8-move 3e algs, and then of course anything less than that, like 6-move 2e, 2e algs. Finally, we'll move on to half-turn reduction. So half-turn reduction is basically when you go from domino reduction to which is having R2, F2, U, and D moves to turning those U and D moves into U2 and D2 moves. This, of course, gives much better cases. The corners can always be solved in like 4 moves, so you always get good corner cases. I'll explain corners in a second because they're a little interesting. And then finishes are easy to find because I'm always bad at finding finishes off half-turn reduction, but they're usually fairly simple to find, and you can always get very good skeletons. So, how do we do half-turn reduction? It's very similar to getting to domino reduction, actually. So, let's say we have this domino reduction. We can set up 2 triggers like this. So, you might recognize this trigger from the domino reduction tutorial. It's just the 4C2E trigger. So you can use similar triggers to get to half-turn reduction. However, if you only do that, you can get cases like this. So, this looks like half-turn reduction. Alright? You have all of the red and orange, all of the blue and green, all of the yellow and white. Looks just like a half-turn reduction, right? Looks just like this. However, if you try and solve the corners, you will notice that, like, you can't with only half turns. You get this opposite swap. So there are 2 different cases of corners where that can't be solved with half turn reduction. So it's the opposite swap and then this 3 cycle. That's not the 3 cycle. Here's the 3 cycle. So you have opposite swap and then this 3 cycle here. So those are the 2 cases you can get. Fake half-turn reduction can be useful if you have the 3 cycle, because you usually can get like a lot of blocks and block build to a 3E out. So it can be useful in that sense. However, it's generally not as good as a normal half-turn reduction. So how do you combat this? Well, you just do trial and error. You want to go for a half-turn reduction when you have easy corners. Easy corners like 3, 4, 5, 6 moves. I'd say up to 6 moves. So like this corner case, you notice it's a very easy corner case. So I would probably look for half-turn reduction on this scramble. Also up to 6 moves. I'd probably look for half-turn reduction up to 6 moves. However, if I had a case like this is a perfect example, where I have horrible corners. Look, I have 1 move, and I have J-perm corners on the top. That's not good corners. I would not go for half-turn reduction. Instead, I'd either skip this DR, look for maybe a way to solve corners while giving me a lot of edges, or skip to a different DR. So, however, if I had good corners, I would set up to a domino reduction trigger. Now, you can use most of the same domino reduction triggers for half-turn reduction. However, they have to have like a U2. So, like this one, you can't use this one because this has a U prime, and it breaks domino reduction. There aren't any cases that are like this anyway, but there are a couple other cases that you should know. So there's this one, there's this one, the RUY2 R prime, there's R, there's also this one with 1 edge out, which is R, F2, U2, F2, R prime, and then there's this one where you have 2 edges out, which is R, E2, R prime. Lastly, there's this one, which is kind of like the corners are in a similar pattern to the R, U2, R prime. However, you have an extra edge out here, and it's just R, U2, F2, R prime, and then the inverse, so R, F2, U2, R prime. Or you can do R prime, F2, U2, R. Any variation of that. So those are some good algs you can use for half-turn reduction. Remember, when in half-turn reduction, It's fairly easy to see if you have good or bad corners. Just see if you can like solve them in 4 moves with half turns. Very easy to see. If you can't, then you don't have half turn reduction, and you should probably be looking for something else. So yeah, once at half turn reduction, you can usually find easy finishes, or you can generally get very good skeletons to do insertions on. So yeah, that's basically part 2. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll be leaving some links in the description to the FMC Facebook page. Very useful. You get like a lot of reconstructions. You can learn a lot there. The domino reduction guide, that's also very useful. It's a 31-page guide on domino reduction. If you want to read that, it's got some useful information. And then a doc with some different nice domino reduction algorithms. So yeah, that's part 2 of my domino reduction guide. The last part. If you have any questions, let me know, and bye.